All right. Hey, y'all.
Hey y'all.
Welcome to Southern Sober and Sassy. I'm here and Christy's there, and we decided to do this podcast via Zoom because we're not in the same state, even. So that's why we're doing it. And we decided because we needed to come see you all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're
So
having withdrawals.
withdrawals from seeing each other. So
Yes.
I wanted to bring a topic for us today and do a little reading, and then I'm going to hand it to Christy and get her thoughts on this. Projection, projection in recovery. It means placing the blame on others for things we are really responsible for ourselves, like rationalization. Projection serves two functions. It reinforces denial, such as I'm not an alcoholic or they make me drink. If you had my boss, you'd use drugs too. Number two, it helps preserve the status quo. Why should I make any changes? I'm not the one at fault. When others make the appropriate changes, I won't need to drink or use any drugs. Blaming someone else seems to relieve an addict from the responsibility of making changes. As long as you do this for me, you cannot expect me to change. Since the other's not likely to change, the drinking and other drug use continues. And I'll just say that trying to convince an addict or alcoholic that their arguments are not valid is usually unproductive because addictive projection serves to sustain the use and abuse of substances. It actually will start dissipating when we get sober. It's been proven, but not without doing work. So, what are your thoughts, Christy?
The blame game's over in recovery. The blame game's over. You know, Something else is the opposite of that is when I take full responsibility for my lot, massive progress is made. Now, that's a pretty heavy statement, because addicts and alcoholics are very impatient people. And I I want to get better quickly, you know. And when I take full responsibility for everything that I have done, massive progress gets made very, very quickly. And I remember I fought the blame and, you know, blaming it on my dad. And, my sponsor finally said to me, she said, Christy, look, nobody poured that alcohol down your throat and shoved that cocaine up your nose. Your dad didn't do it. Your kids didn't do it. Your mama didn't do it. And you have to take responsibility for that. And that real common sense, black and white way of her saying that to me was the best way for me to learn. And shit changed whenever she said that to me. And I said, that is something that broke through that denial, because I could not deny that. I could not deny that. Look, nobody poured that alcohol down your throat and shoved that cocaine up your nose. So um, that was the first part. The second part was when I started to take responsibility for my behavior, what I had done to, specifically what I had done to my children. So, um, and how I had behaved at work. I was under the influence. I was an egomaniac, and I thought that I could get away with stuff, and I did for a long time. Um, I was the last to know, and I ended up losing that dream job because of my alcoholism. So that is a very big that is a that is a lot to swallow, and it is a lot to look at, and we just had to piecemeal it. We just had to baby step our way through that. So um, as long as I'm talking about you and talking about them and talking about chaos and drama, I don't have to look at myself.
Right.
I didn't want to talk about me.
Yeah.
You know, we could talk about my successes because I thought that I was, 10 feet tall and bulletproof. But if you started getting real close to my secret, I would change the subject very quickly. And if you didn't pay attention, that's when I turned into a monster and I made sure that you would go away. I would verbally abuse you and shut that conversation down. Ugh. Anyway, there's that off the top of my head. What are your thoughts?
I think for me, I mean, I wanted to blame my childhood, and I wanted to blame other relationships that had failed and didn't want to take a part in it. And for me, the projection, you know, even with my story and going away, I, in the beginning, got to play the victim. I got to. I allowed myself to play the victim and everything that happened. And looking back now, I'm so grateful for what had happened, because not only was I able to humbly work through the steps, it helped me to look at my part. And so every relationship that I have, I'm 100 every relationship that I have, I'm 50% responsible for 100% of my share. And so now, the longer that I immerse myself in recovery, I realize that, my projection of other people's shit is a deflection of me, because it's like a lot of times when things get under my skin and I get upset about something, I see something in that person that I don't like about me.
Mhm.
And, you and I were talking about something that happened with work, and I was just really ticked off and felt betrayed, and, all of these things. And I stop, have to pause and say, what is my part in it? And I think the biggest thing that has helped me to not project and not deflect and accept for things in my life is looking at my part. Because whether we want to admit it, or whether I want to admit it, everything that happens in my life, I have a part. And what I mean by that is, even as a child and things happened, my part in it as an adult is I hung on to it for so long, and I beat you over the head. I beat my family with the stick over your head, blaming, shaming, and guilting them, when, what's done is done. And so I got the opportunity to heal from those issues as a child, and I got to take those opportunities as an adult. And this is not, I know a lot of people have had a lot of trauma in their life. And I understand that. And I've heard people that I've worked with say, you just don't understand. You can't understand because it didn't happen to you. And I have to say, whether you want to hear this or not, maybe it didn't happen to me, but this is your opportunity to heal from it. That gift is something that we are all afforded, is to get better. It really truly is. The 12 steps is a beautiful place for that. And if you need more healing, there's therapy, there's treatment centers that have scholarships. There's so much out there now. The stigma of, untreated addiction and alcoholism and untreated mental health is slowly finally going away. And it's not okay any longer to ask for help. We're allowed to ask for help. And I just know that when I finally let go and said, okay, this is bigger than me, my projection kept me sick. It stole my peace. Because if it was everybody else's fault, then I didn't have anything to part to play in it. And that didn't work for me when I got sober, because
Mhm.
I had that uneasy conscience. Oh, I got a conscience. that conscious knowing that I could no longer blame, shame, and guilt other people for my shit, and I had to accept my part. That was the big game changer for me, and knowing that I no longer have to project my own shit on people to deflect on what's going on with me. And I think just by talking this through is realizing that if I don't like something, I have some choices. I can step away from that partnership, relationship, friendship, etc. I can go to that person and share, hey, if that is something, if it's a person, place, or thing that I want to have a relationship with, I can share with them how I felt hurt or how whatever my emotions are. Or I can just let it be and do acceptance and realize maybe it's not that big. But me and my big mouth, I can talk about it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you I'm upset and how this hurt me and how it was not fair. Because little Amy, at 8 years old, is telling you how my little heart was hurt and I felt betrayed. And, I think too is if we can name it, we can actually, if we can name what it is, and that's a program of recovery. That takes time. Once we get sober, we don't know what we don't know. And I think that makes a lot of sense that I can go back to that little girl and tell her, hey, it's okay. You can
Mhm.
talk about this, and being able to have a safe space to talk about it with.
Mhm. I believe that anything we name can be fixed. And you just talked about that. When I kept deflecting that I was an alcoholic, I never got better. The minute that I named it and I said, okay, 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 fine. I didn't sign up for this. I do not want this. I'm pretty pissed off that I have it, but I've got it and I'm an alcoholic. When I said that, it was so much relief was taken off of me. I didn't like saying it. And of course, nobody does. But it was the truth. And massive progress started to get made at that point in time. Something else um, that you pointed out was relationships and how I behave now with a lot of sobriety versus how I behaved in relationships in early sobriety and in active addiction. In active addiction, I'd slam that door shut. If you did not do what I wanted you to do, I would very quickly close the door on that relationship. We're done. You didn't do it my way. And if you and I'm not going to talk to you until we do it my way. And whenever you do come back and try and talk to me about it, it's still going to be on my terms. So I had to be in control of relationships at all time. I was very quick to end relationships. I had that brick wall up. Then I come into the program of recovery, and the program of recovery in early sobriety with relationships is it's almost like a battlefield, because I have to feel all those feelings in those relationships raw. I don't get to drink or drug those feelings away anymore. And, you know, I am encouraged to act half right. Now,
Yeah.
at that point in time in early sobriety, I did not know how to act half right. I was immature. I was, unprofessional to an extent. And I did not, I was very uncooperative. And so I had to learn how to act half right. And there was a lady, um, an old wise woman, and she would say that all the time. Christy, you need to learn to act half right. And one day after a meeting, she came up to me and she said, "Do you know what I mean by that?" And she said, "Let's it sounds like a joke whenever I say it." She said, "But it's really not." She said, "Where you're at in early sobriety right now is, there's two powers that are fighting for you. The devil wants you back, and the light wants you, and it's just everything is so uncomfortable in early sobriety." And she said, "You've always been a rebel. You have always um, been a rule breaker. What you have always not followed proper protocol. What I'm asking you is, are you willing to act just half right? Just half. I'm not asking you to be a nun. I'm not asking you to um, completely and 100% change your personality. I'm just asking you, are you willing to stop cussing 50% of how much that you cuss now? Are you willing to not fight with your ex-husband at least 50% less than you did before? Are you willing to listen to your children 50% more than you did before? And that was a turning point for me. And I said, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "I can do 50%. I can do half right." And that is when major progress was made. A lot of major progress was made. Now, in moving forward, 17 years down the line, when I have something that goes on in any of my relationships, whether it's with my children, like what we were talking about, or whether it's at work, I pause. I've learned the power of silence. I have learned that the silent one has the power. I've learned not to react. I have learned to A humble woman or a humble man will sit in a corner, close his mouth, open his ears, and just watch it all go down. He will not say a word. She will not say a word. She will observe and watch everything that is going down in the workplace or with her children. She will observe first. He will observe first. He doesn't have to participate. He gathers that information, tries to understand it better, prays for wisdom, then responds. So my relationships are very different how I respond. A lot of that has to do with who I'm talking to. Some people trigger me more than others, but I have to remember that I've worked very, very, very hard for my sobriety, and stability and security and maturity is part of acting half right, staying half right, staying on the high road, behaving how I am supposed to behave. With that comes massive discipline and wisdom. Um, and, I work hard for those two things. And I don't put my foot in my mouth as quickly as I used to. People gonna do what they want to do, Amy Cooper. You know that. I say that all the time. People gonna do what they want to do. And I'm at a point in my life that 90% of the time I'm gonna let them. That other 10%, when it affects me and my loved ones, or it affects my pocketbook, I'm real laid back, but I can set up real quick, and I will defend my happiness. I will defend my finances. I will defend my career, and I will defend what is right, regardless of how I may feel.
And your peace. You are a defender of your peace, as you always say.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah. And so if somebody else is not acting right, what is my part in it? Well, I don't have to absorb them not acting right. I can step back, let them be if they're having a bad day, and not engage in conversation. Or I can a learned behavior for me is learning to respond, not react. If you're having a bad day, I mean, people act the way they act, and it's not a lot of people, especially in recovery. I mean, we're humans. I've been saying that a lot this week. We're human beings, and we're going to make mistakes.
Hmm.
But now I make honest mistakes, right? I mean, I'm an honest and a humble hustler.
That's funny.
Yeah, an honest,
Oh,
humble hustler.
a humble hustler.
Yeah, be
I've never
careful.
heard that.
You need to
You
roll
know,
that.
that's kind of like being a spiritual gangster.
Yes.
That's how I kind of see myself,
Yeah.
spiritual gangster. You know.
Yeah. It said when you said something about a rule breaker, I'll never forget. After I got sober, that movie Magic Mike came out. And so I was so excited. I like posted it on Facebook. This was like 10 years ago. And I posted on Facebook, I'm going to be a rule breaker. And my mom calls me. She's like, Amy, that is not becoming of a young lady. And, you've got, you just got sober and you got my poor mom. Bless her.
you know, there was a lady back in Nashville. She was at my home group, and she approached me after a meeting one time, and I was in my first year of recovery, and she said, "You should really clean up your mouth." And I had a lot of respect for her. She wasn't a woman that talked a lot, but
Yeah.
whenever she did, it was like mic drop. It was like everyone listened. Um, she ended up being my spiritual advisor and really helped me through some Al-Anon stuff. But anyway, I'll never forget that. You should really clean your mouth up. And I was like, bitch, you need to go on with yourself. But I am no saint. I am very human. I did clean my mouth up. Um, but I still cuss, and that's just a part of it. I know when to be. I know when to behave. I know, you know. And then I have friends where I can cut up and act a fool and have a lot of fun, but it doesn't need to be for long. It doesn't need to be for long because I can snap back into that old way of thinking and that old way of behavior very quickly, you know.
Yeah.
And I say all the time, I self destruct fast.
Yeah.
I don't. If I ever went on a dry drunk, I listen to these people on dry drunks, and I've been on dry drunk for weeks and months and years, and I'm like, I self destruct in about 10 minutes. I don't need 10 days, 10 weeks, 10 months. Um, you know, so I part of this topic that you have brought up is I know myself now as a result of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know myself before. I didn't know better. That's the good news and the bad news about the 12 steps. I now know. I now know myself.
Yeah.
And I can, if I backtrack or act a fool or whatever, I know, yeah, it's fun for a short amount of time, but I know that it can't be for long. That I need to go back to acting half right.
Yeah. Good stuff, girl. I appreciate you jumping on with me. I missed you.
I know, I miss you too. You need to come home. Oh my gosh.
I am. I'll be home and our next podcast. We don't we'll check it out if we can make it happen next week. If not, we'll do it the next week. Maybe we'll do it live at the beach.
That would be fun.
That's a good idea. Okay. So everybody, thank you for listening. We appreciate you listening. We hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I'm gonna say bye. I'm gonna let Chrissy say bye.
Bye. See you next week.
Bye bye.
Bye.